Disintegration is a first-person shooter blended with real-time strategy. It's honestly like nothing I've ever played before, and the gameplay is really unique. It was directed by Marcus Leto, who was the co-creator of Halo and former creative director at Bungie, and was developed as a debut title by a small 30-person studio called V1 Interactive. Technically it's an indie game, but you could be forgiven for thinking it's a AAA with some of the graphics and story cutscenes. The game is available on PS4, Xbox One and Windows. When I picked up this game, I was excited to review it based on A, the fact that Marcus Leto was involved, and B, the prospects of digging into a completely new multiplayer PvP experience after playing through the campaign. Unfortunately, I discovered that the multiplayer servers are being shut down on November 17th due to a lack of engagement from the community. I actually considered not making this video once I found out, but I thought it would be worth sharing my thoughts on the game to help people decide whether they should try it out in the future, even though there won't be a multiplayer option. In this review, I'll talk as honestly as I can about the story, the gameplay, the upgrade system, and I'll touch on the multiplayer toward the end. I will also discuss the ethics behind shutting down the multiplayer servers and who this game might be suitable for, given that they won't be available for much longer. Please bear in mind that all of this is simply my own opinion. If you enjoy the video or find it useful, please do me a favour and leave me a like or comment, as this really helps the channel out. I've broken the video down into sections, so you can click the timestamps below if you want to skip to any particular part. Okay, so first of all, the story setting. It's a sort of post-apocalyptic world in a sense. The world itself seems fine, but the majority of humanity have been integrated. That means they have preserved their brain and memories in a robotic body. The story goes that this began by choice, but soon became enforced by a group called the Rayon, who were fixated on surpassing humanity and believed themselves superior. There was a civil war, which seems to have been lost by the regular humans, so that many people were not given the choice and were forced to integrate. The story follows a protagonist called Roma Shoal, apparently once a celebrity gravcycle racer who manages to escape the Iron Cloud. We follow him and a number of other escapees on their journey to join a rebellion. The story feels fairly familiar to other sci-fi narratives and reminded me a little of the Terminator movies, although instead of having a logical and rational robot mind behind the actions to take over the world, in this case you have some politically psychotic humans who integrated themselves and then started forcing others to do the same. The story setting is interesting enough, even if it doesn't break any world records for storytelling. Some of the characters are funny and very likeable as you progress, but the story feels a little rushed in places, so where some of the characters are very likeable and have some good one-liners, the main protagonist himself falls a bit flat and seems to have been upstaged by his sidekicks. The story is fully voice acted and the cutscenes are very good looking for the most part. I did notice that one of the side characters in particular had terrible lip sync and outright refused to look at me when I wanted to talk to her in the hub between missions, but I just assumed I'd done something to piss her off. Fairly standard situation for me. Anyway, the gameplay itself is where the game really shines. If I'm being truly honest, for the first half an hour I didn't like it. It felt strange and unfamiliar. You play in the first person as Roma on his gravcycle. You also have command of up to 4 other party members in your team, who all have individual abilities you can make use of. The menus and UI have been really well designed, so it's easy to navigate and control the various elements of the gameplay. While flying on your gravcycle, you can choose to play the game as first-person shooter, leaving your teammates to rely on the AI to guide them, or you can step back from the first-person shooting element and micromanage your team instead, so that the game becomes more of a real-time strategy. The best method to play the game seems to be to combine the two. Once you have been accustomed to the controls and the flow of the game, it isn't as difficult as it seems to play both FPS and the RTS at the same time, flanking your enemies personally and directing your team to use concussion grenades, mortar fire, slow motion fields and other abilities to take down your opponents. The various missions are varied and the environments are quite different from mission to mission. One thing I would say is that if you're looking for a pure first person shooter or a pure real-time strategy game to play, this game isn't for you. There are much better FPS and RTS games out there to try if that's all you're after, but if you want to try something different, you just might like this. Personally, once I'd spent some time getting used to the controls and played the first couple of missions, I actually really started to enjoy it. Controlling my teammates became second nature, either stun locking enemies or bursting them down with combined fire. I got used to the feel of the gravcycle too, which, as you might expect, feels like you're floating, almost like flying a drone. I had a number of weapons at my disposal, which included machine guns, a rifle, grenade launchers or missiles. I also had the ability to heal teammates with a healing dart or a ground area of effect. I also enjoyed being able to upgrade the protagonist and the individual teammates to give them more health, more damage, shorter cooldowns on their abilities, etc. As I said, I found the gameplay itself really enjoyable. It's an interesting idea, and considering how complicated it sounded at first, it played pretty well, and I definitely saw the benefit of making use of the team strategically to achieve whatever mission result I wanted. The bonus objectives in each mission helped to keep things interesting too, by presenting various challenges. One thing I would say though is that the game is pretty linear. There is no open world element, and you're restricted in each mission to a set team that you take with you. Each mission will give you different team members which are allocated to you, and your own arsenal of weapons on the grav cycle is also decided for you. So you'll find that each mission you play is different in terms of the tactics you need to adopt. I personally would have preferred to have more freedom, if I'm honest. I liked all the variation, but I would have much preferred to be able to set my character up with the weapons I wanted to use and pick the team members I wanted to take with me. I feel like V1 missed an opportunity here. The campaign could have been much more engaging, I feel, if there was more player choice. The gameplay is genuinely different from anything I've played before, but I feel that the campaign, despite being really enjoyable and having clearly had a lot of effort put into it, was an introduction to the multiplayer PvP in a sense. It's around 12 hours long from start to finish depending on what difficulty you play. Which leads me onto the multiplayer. It seems a shame to me. The originality of the gameplay and the potential this game had, it seems such a shame that V1 are having to shut down the multiplayer servers. From reading around on Reddit and other forums, it seems that there just wasn't the player population, so the matchmaking system died. I played a little of the multiplayer myself. It played a little like an arena combat system. Honestly, I think they could have done more with it. There were teams you could pick and customise to an extent, but again, the limited player choice made me feel like the team wasn't my own, which in turn would never have given me the addictive gameplay quality I'm after when getting into PvP. But that's just my own perspective, and it's easy for me to sit here and say that they should have done things differently. Now, I can understand why they would need to shut the servers down. If people just aren't playing the PvP, then the servers can be put to better use. It's a cost overhead which clearly isn't turning them a profit. They're a small studio, so clearly this kind of situation isn't sustainable, so I can understand it from a business perspective. But ethically, for the people that bought into Disintegration for the fact that there would be a multiplayer option, and expected that replayability, and actively wanted to continue playing, it seems a shame for those people having spent their money on a game only to have it shut down so soon after release. If V1 Interactive were ever to release a Disintegration 2 or some kind of follow-up game, I would hope that they will offer something as a goodwill gesture to the guys and girls that paid the full price at launch. It's a tough topic really. Free-to-play games are often so fraught with danger and microtransactions, but if you come out disappointed, then at least you haven't paid for that disappointment. When you charge players for a game with a multiplayer PvP element to it, and then it gets shut down only 5 months after release, it's a really tough one to defend, especially if you've got hopes to release games in the future. It's a shame. I'm not prepared to sit here and throw stones at a small development team. That's not my place, and I totally understand their decision, but I do hope for future games they develop, they have a token of goodwill in mind for players who feel they lost out here. So the big question, should you buy and play this game? Well, right now in early November 2020, the price point is around £25 in the UK, around $30 US. Personally, I'd say this is too high right now for a game which is likely to only last you around 12 hours, now that the multiplayer has been shut down. The gameplay itself is enjoyable, at least I thought so. It's a really interesting and ambitious concept, and I feel that for a first game from a new studio with only 30 people, it's actually very impressive. It's just a shame that a few missteps here and there seem to have blunted the edges. If they were to drop the price at some point in the future, then I would definitely consider giving this a shot, simply to experience something completely different. Obviously it's your call if you want to spend the money and time on Disintegration. These are just my own thoughts. I don't regret my time playing the game. I enjoyed the campaign and a complete change of pace from other FPS or strategy games. It's also good to support smaller studios, especially when they're clearly ambitious and looking to shake things up and step off the beaten path. I hope you found this video useful. Leave me a like and comment if you did, sub if you're new, and I'll wrap it up there. Thank you for watching, take care, stay safe, bye bye now.